Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on high-performance computing. Today, my guests are from NetApp. We have Treadway and Rich Seger. Gentlemen, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Well, good to be here, yes.
It's great to have you. You know, we're coming off of a very busy week at SC12. Did you guys have a good show?
We had a very good show. We had more meetings than we could. We actually had to book 2 meeting rooms, and they were booked solid every day, all day. It was great. And then a bunch of impromptu meetings. We didn't see your red hat, though, so we're kind of, we're glad to catch up with you.
Yeah, I was running all over the floor shooting videos, but yeah, I'm glad we can catch up here. So, I thought we'd just get back up to speed. I brought your slides up. Do you guys want to start there?
Sure, that'd be great, Rich. I'll start. This is Richard Treadway. So what I thought we'd do is go over our big data strategy and how we define big data, and then Rich Seger will talk about our HPC offering and what we announced most recently. And I think one of the things that we find, and we've been in this big data world for about 2 years now, is there's a lot of confusion. In fact, big data has risen to the number one most confusing term in IT, surpassing cloud. So whoever you talk to, you're going to get a different definition of big data. And the way we've been thinking about it in terms of when we talk to our customers is it's a place where you really have to think about doing things differently. There's an inflection point where you suddenly realize that you can't do more of what you were doing yesterday again tomorrow, just a little bit more of it. You really have to think of things differently. And that might be for a number of reasons. It might be because the data you've got is complex and your existing systems can't deal with that. It might be the speed at which it's coming at you, or just the sheer volume. It used to be that the answer to big data was the delete key, and that's no longer true. You really are in a situation where you have to keep everything forever, and then some. So it really, in the way we think of it and the way we talk to our customers, it's what can we do to help you at that inflection point to get control of your data growth, to break through and do new things that you couldn't do before, and to sort of gain insight from all of that data to find that needle in the haystack in terms of contributing both to your top line for revenue opportunities and also to your bottom line for being able to store all that data efficiently. Now, one of the things we've done in our approach to big data is to define a portfolio of solutions and products, and we sort of coyly talk about that as the big data ABCs: analytics, bandwidth, and content. And the reason why we've divided it up into these areas is because we think it brings some clarity to the space. With big data, there's so many different use cases, and in fact, it's almost as though each use case is unique, really, at this point, because everybody is experimenting. But what we find is they break into these 3 major areas of analytics, bandwidth, and content. Analytics for extremely large data sets, a bandwidth for high-performance intensive workloads, and content for boundless secure storage. The other thing to note, and I'm moving on to slide 4 about our strategy, is that we've always thought of ourselves as best of breed in storage. And what we do is we partner with others to create a complete solution. So you'll never see us acquiring companies to move up the stack to get into the data analysis business or the database business. What we do is we create preference through a deep integration, and we add value in that deep integration so that folks recognize NetApp storage and its infrastructure as the best for their particular application. And that's no different in our big data space. So we build that on open standards with these best-in-class partnerships. And I think a point to be made here is in an area that's being disrupted, like the disruption from big data with things like Hadoop, there is just a lot of innovation going on right now, and there's a lot of VC money being poured into those technologies. So you're getting a lot of innovation. And with our approach of being able to partner with all of those folks, it creates a certain flexibility and a certain choice. But because we do deep integration and validation, it gives you that choice at a lower risk. So moving on to slide 5, the other point to make, and then I'll turn it over to Rich to talk about the HPC part of the offering. The other point to make is that our offering is based on both our storage platforms. We have, with the acquisition of Ingenio, we now have a platform called the E-Series, and it's optimized for performance and density, as well as our ONTAP operating system that we've had for the last 20 years. And what we do with our big data portfolio is actually use both of these platforms in an optimal way. In some cases, like Hadoop, we actually have E-Series and Data ONTAP in the single solution. In other solutions, we focus entirely on the E-Series platform or on the ONTAP platform. So with that sort of short introduction about how we view big data, I'm going to turn it over to Rich to talk about the E-Series in particular and our HPC offering.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Again, I'll kind of reiterate a little bit what Richard said. The E-Series for us is a way to address a part of the market that, while FAS has addressed it in the past, the growth and the need to access that data has become so important that we really almost need to have a separate product line to do that. E-Series was just, fell into our lap literally, and we've only been growing that business ever since we bought it. But really, the way we look at it, it's a dedicated infrastructure. It's application-specific and workload-specific. It's less virtualization, than you would find in a normal IT. And Richard said it best, and it's optimized for performance and density. That's really the goal of these organizations, is to find that high-performance platform that they can run at the same time density to keep cooling costs down, to maximize footprint, and all those things. Again, in these places, storage is that dedicated resource. Most of the management is done at the data layer, at the application layer, not so much at the storage layer, which again differentiates it from our FAS product that has most of the management at the storage layer. You know this next part pretty well, better than I even, is the workloads, HPC, research and analysis. What's funny is if you look back at NetApp's heritage, this is where we started, was in simulation and modeling and being kind of an engineer's dream of an application filer. So in a way, we've actually come back to that market. Now, when you look at things like EDA, FAS will still play the majority of role in there. But there are places in EDA like tape out that really need that very, very high performance that E-Series can bring. So you'll see a lot of combination solutions. If we have time, we can talk about our Hadoop solution that actually uses both FAS and E-Series. And again, the rest of the businesses, seismic processing, business analytics, and those things, as well as maybe not HPC related, maybe HPC directly, but certainly HPC related, is this idea of long-term retention and large-scale archive. Richard said it as well, is it's not about just keeping the data. It's actually about keeping that data as information longer. It's about being able to go back and derive information from data that's years, decades old in some cases. So again, having that highly dense platform that you can do that cost effectively is something that Ingenio gave us. So I'll move to slide 7. We've certainly had the product since May 9th of 2 years ago, so we've had it for a while. And currently we've been working with engineering. We brought that engineering group over. Some of the new things we've added in the latest 5400 solution is SSD cache to improve performance. We've also added mirroring and copy service. We have this thing called dynamic disk pools that in some HPC environments, you can actually reduce the failed disk recovery time by almost 80%. So a lot of these organizations are looking at that as a great way to maintain a high level of throughput. As you know, most of these HPC groups try and keep a certain level of performance, but if there's multiple drive failures, that performance degrades. Well, DDP, as we call it, or dynamic disk pools, actually prevents that, and you can actually maintain that performance level. And again, from an interface standpoint, we've added 10 gigs iSCSI and 6 gig SAS to go along with our fiber channel and InfiniBand. And a good point to remind is, we've got almost 300,000 of these systems out, E-Series based products. So we are obviously doing a lot to work with those current customers, upgrade, and they'll find new benefit in those. And if we think about kind of what these new features add, and really that is our big data bandwidth portfolio. These are all solutions today that are shipping that are very, very focused on high-performance solutions or high-performance markets. The first one is our HPC Lustre and Seismic. Two solutions. One is a Lustre solution that you can build yourself. We give you the tools. We give you the reference architectures. Lawrence Livermore took advantage of this. Many others took advantage of this, and we've had great success there. Also Seismic. We've actually got a product called our Seismic Processing Solution that actually uses StorNext as its file system, E-Series 5400. And that is a very, very useful system for, as you know, StorNext has had a great legacy in that market. So we're having success with that as well. We've also got a media content management solution that allows us to go into these large-scale rich media areas and bring that data in, manage it through its workflow. Full motion video and video surveillance are both products focused on different parts of the surveillance market that allow, again, government for full motion videos allows them to bring in those live feeds of drones. So again, each one of those solutions are out in the market today and actually doing quite well. I'll talk a little bit about our newest solution. We announced it on Friday before supercomputing, and it is our rack-based Lustre solution. And the real difference between this and our other Lustre solution, it was a very conscious effort to move in this direction, was we understand most customers want to build your own, and we're absolutely okay with that. That's what the Lustre solution is for. This HPS rack is really built around those customers looking to get to results faster. Lund University is a great example. They acquired a genome sequencer and really had no data infrastructure to go and manage that data, but they needed to get it online quickly. We showed them our HPS configuration, and within 5 weeks, 6 weeks, they were actually processing data through their new genome sequencing machine. Again, from an HPC perspective, that's an incredibly fast sales cycle. We think that's a good sign that this HPS rack kind of hits that mark. Again, it's built on E-Series. It's basically prepackaged. You literally roll it into your data center, plug it in, and lights are on. It comes with a TerraScala Lustre stack appliance. So not only is the Lustre pre-configured, but actually the management layer is as well. TurboWorks is another example of a customer that's bought the HPS rack, and they do financial analysis. Again, they don't have a bunch of folks running around in lab coats or the benefit of having graduate students. They really needed to have this fit their normal IT model, which is more than one person manages more than one thing. So this, again, the HPS rack was very much to what they were looking for. And kind of finally, the last slide, 10, is just really about how HPC and big data. I was reading many articles from the SC12, and I think the interweaving of big data and HPC will only become more pronounced. They will not take each other over. They'll always have different vectors to some degree, but the fact is they will be very, very much tied to each other. Lawrence Livermore is a great example. While it is clearly HPC, they are clearly doing analytics. And I would argue just about anybody doing HPC has some analytic tone to it. And as those methodologies improve and become more scalable, and as we add disparate internet data that Hadoop's allowing you to do, we think this is only going to be an explosion for HPC. Again, we try and build solutions, or we build solutions that kind of address the difficult data challenges that customers face. So we have our FAS product for our IT world, and we also have our E-Series for our more dedicated workload environments. And I think ultimately what this is going to do for big data and HPC is it's going to make it a more commercially viable conversation to have with customers. When today it is very much a, pick up a machete if you want to build a Hadoop solution, I think eventually it will be more of an order form discussion. How much do you need? What do you need? And that's where we're trying to go to. We are not trying to address the very beginning of analytics, Hadoop, and that. We are really trying to talk to those customers that are enterprise-driven, are really looking to derive value from their implementations. So with that, I'll kind of stop and hopefully get some questions from you.
Well, terrific. Hey, thanks, guys. So, it's kind of fascinating to watch vendors like NetApp kind of evolve their presentations about big data, and so I really liked what you had to say here. And this week at SC12, I was talking to someone, and they said, well, when customers do Hadoop, they're really crunching. They're using cheap disk, but they're creating assets. But you don't want to leave those assets on that cheap commodity disk system. You want to move it to something robust like a NAS. And when I think of NAS, I think of NetApp. So, is that an accurate way to look at how you guys are approaching this?
There are two things to think about there. One of them, we do have an Hadoop implementation that uses both the E-Series and the FAS, and we try to optimize that for uptime and being able to execute big workloads under failure scenarios where the SLAs are really important. It may be, a life and death situation. It might be if you're late with the analysis, you're going to be losing millions of dollars. It's not an Hadoop implementation for everyone, but for those cases where SLAs really matter, we have an implementation that delivers very robust performance in failure mode and can be brought up very quickly in a failure mode. But that being said, one of the use cases that we see are ones where people generally extract data using Hadoop and bring it into their existing BI systems to run analyses, and that's a common use case. But what we do isn't for everyone. And in many cases, as you know, Hadoop was born from the internet, where it was designed to be run with white box commodity hardware for very cheap storage.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think you're absolutely right, Rich. I think the way we look at it is, think about a Ford Motor Company. They have a pile of ore out in the backyard, out in the back of but the front of the factory, they've got a brand new car, right? And we think that's the idea, the concept of big data, is it's refining that process of turning ore or data into information that has high value. And you do treat those things differently. You don't drive the car back out and sit it next to the pile of ore. You put it in a showroom, you keep it protected. We think that's absolutely right, and we think that's why we think we're in a unique position to address this market.
Yeah, and you guys, you mentioned risk, and another thing I learned this week is that Hadoop basically has no security built into it. It wasn't built with that in mind, and to think that you're putting mission critical assets on something like that's got to be kind of scary for customers.
Yeah, and as I said, I think the segment that we're after is the one that's in the enterprise that has very stringent requirements around security and performance and delivery, but they would like to use this disruptive technology called Hadoop, but they're not going to do it the way the inventors of Hadoop, Yahoo and Google and Amazon and eBay and so forth do it, because their risk profile is quite different. You
talk to Google and Yahoo, I think they're doing it differently now than they did a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So I think everybody is evolving into that space. So
Yeah. So when I think of the E-Series, of course, I think of Sequoia. It's now I guess it's number 2 in the top 500. How has that come? We announced that was going to power up a year ago, and how is that machine working?
Great. It exceeded expectations. They've actually bought more and look to do implementations or further implementations. So they met the requirement of a terabyte and actually exceeded the requirement of a terabyte per second. So very well. We couldn't be happier. And obviously the most important one is Lawrence to answer that. And I think if you go to the lugs, if you go to some of the other things, the way they talk about Sequoia, I think is indicative of the performance they're getting.
So certainly, a world-class I/O bandwidth machine fed by that giant Blue Gene Q, and then the storage by NetApp. So part of that, of course, is Lustre, what you just mentioned, and I wanted to ask you guys, do you see Lustre moving to the enterprise, especially when you augment it with stuff like the Terascala technology?
Well, we do. We don't see just Lustre, but we certainly see Lustre as a big player there. I think WAM Cloud being bought by Intel is a clear indication that it's moving in that direction. Terascala, I think, is a as you said, is a great player there. We do think it is becoming a little bit a bit more resilient as time goes on. You see you have now WAM Cloud has 2 versions, the versions that the scientists use and the versions that the business people use. We think that type of hardening is a good behavior. and we only see that continued. But we do think there are, I don't think the decision's been made about which file system will rule, if it will be one. It very well, PNFS is a very, very interesting technology we're working with as well as many others out in the market that we work with. StorNext is another example of a slightly different, probably not likely HPC in its truest form, but it has a bit more of the data management on the back end that people like to see. So as Richard said earlier, and I think it's worth repeating, we do look for our partnerships to enable us to take the best, what we do best with E-Series is performance and density, and apply best-of-breed solutions to it. We don't want to find ourselves, committed to only one HPC solution at this point. That time may come, but right now we're very much kind of enjoying the fruits of being able to have one of the, if not the fastest platform on the market, and work with customers to find a solution that makes sense.
Well, great. So kind of a wrap-up question here, guys. As you mentioned, the Ingenio E-Series product kind of, you got that landed in your lap from an acquisition. I want to ask you about the future, right? Do you continue to develop that top-end kind of technology? And do you think that this big data market is a way to feed that beast in terms of revenue?
Yes, we do. I keep waiting. Richard and I have these discussions over lunch and beers half the time. Is what's going to happen to big data as a term? I think it's going to kind of become this umbrella statement, and you'll talk about individual things a little bit more. But we absolutely do think that's a model. Now, I think the other nice thing is we have a huge OEM business, and I think that's a huge benefit for us because it really focuses our engineering on the performance side of it. Because really, that's the common denominator between all these OEMs is they want the highest performing solution they can get or platform they can get. So I think we're uniquely positioned to continue to develop a highly optimized density and performance platform. And so I think that's going to only get more and more important to customers. I won't use the term bifurcation in terms of that it's going to be black or white, but I think there's going to be this gradient of data or compute in a company. I think there already is today, between your standard email, which may not need all kinds of performance but needs lots of storage, and then this whole idea of this very, very high-end, high throughput. And I think at the extremes, E-Series and FAS work. And as we start to kind of figure out the middle of this big data, I think our mixed environment, much as you talk about, when you create IP from your data, you want to treat it on a very high enterprise level platform. We have that number one OS, storage OS in the market. At the same time, you need to get to those results quickly, and E-Series provides that.
I think one of the things, just to put it out there, probably 5 years from now, we won't be talking about big data. It'll be a term that just goes away because it's the way you do business. I think it's novel now because the data sets are big and we're digitizing the planet. But once we have the systems in place that can handle that, they're just going to be the systems that handle that. And I think that's quite unlike cloud, which is a place, and you need to be able to say, I've got to go to a place, like go to the cloud to get some information or put some infrastructure in the cloud. But big data is really the process and the infrastructure to process it to get a result, and that's what businesses do. So it could very well be that in 5 years from now we're just not talking about big data anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's just something that's just the daily business. So appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, just want to wrap up here. I want to thank you once again. We got Richard Treadway and Rich Seger, and thanks for coming on the show.
Richard, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
You bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on high-performance computing.